Well, hey there. Welcome to another episode of C-Suite Unplugged, an Alberta Better podcast series. In this series, host Adam Legg talks to Alberta's top CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business leaders about their journey to the C-Suite, what keeps them up at night as an Albertan and as a leader in their industry, and what their outlook is for the future. On this episode, we're talking to Judy Fairburn, a former executive in the energy industry and a fierce early leader of Alberta's burgeoning tech and innovation scene, and most recently, the co-founder and co-CEO of financial feminist platform and venture fund The 51, which is a place that democratizes access to women-led capital for women-led businesses. And Judy is just an extraordinary example of Alberta entrepreneurialism and leadership, adopting a spirit of learning and innovation through her entire career to disrupt the status quo, build Alberta into a place of opportunity, and ensure that everyone can reach their full potential.
Welcome back to Alberta Better and our C-Suite Unplugged podcast series. And today I'm joined by a very good friend of mine, a friend for many years, one who I've had the pleasure of seeing grow and expand her influence. She's been a tremendous support for me, a voice of reason, insight, and innovation. She's had a successful career in the energy sector, led numerous groundbreaking initiatives like Evoke Innovations, co-founder of the 51 Ventures, an early fellow of the Creative Destruction Lab Rockies, a director of the Business Council of Alberta, and my good friend, Judy Fairburn. Judy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Adam. A real pleasure as well to be on the board of Business Council of Alberta and to have seen the successful journey and where you're taking things.
So Judy, before we dig into more of the background in terms of the 51 and all your other thoughts for the future of Alberta, let's share with our listeners a little bit more about who you are, what you're doing these days, and really the purpose that drives you and the work that you're doing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Adam. A real pleasure. These days, I'm co-founder and co-CEO of the 51, which is across Canada, Alberta-founded financial feminist platform and venture fund. It's a place where investors, entrepreneurs, and those that aspire to be either come together and we invest. We help founders join their company, and we learn how an early stage investing. And it's a very inclusive community. And I think what's important is like, why? Why do we found the 51? And it's co-led by Shelley Kuipers and myself as co-CEOs, Alice Reimer, and that needs no introduction, this province also co-founder. And it's a place of community plus capital and commercialization. We've got a community of over 18,000 across Canada and globally now. And what we're really driven by is when we look at things, by 2030, women in Canada are projected to control 2/3 of all accumulated financial wealth versus last decade of about 1/3. It's a big change.
Yeah, that's huge.
And to actually be ready for that, it's actually an imperative that women need to strive to be equal in all matters financial, hence the term financial feminism. And so, hence this community, and then there's the capital side of it. So you put together the capital, and we've activated 17 million of women-led capital in putting that to work in Canadian US founders. And that capital has come from 110 really engaged investors, 90% of who are women. Again, coming back to that wealth transfer perspective across multiple sectors, amazing backgrounds, and many of them Albertans. And a lot of them are new to early stage investing. Again, really starting to get active and using their wealth to invest in the world they want to see. And we're so pleased about all the amazing male champions we also have invested. So we're picking up and driving diversification from a different perspective in Alberta, unlocking a new investor group to drive into different kinds of companies. And I think, one more key stat is that Alberta continues to lead on women tech founders, co-founders in Canada at almost 30%. So that's way higher than the global average of 20% from Crunchbase. And when they look at the stats further in the AEC study, within 2 years, the companies that are most profitable of these startups, they've got women founders. So, what we've done is pulled together, again, with the 51, a platform where you've got the capital, the opportunity to come together in a community and learn and invest in founders that we have a natural advantage on to help them scale and commercialize.
Yeah,
It's a flywheel. It's a flywheel we're building.
Yeah, flywheel, and the concept grows and snowballs and self-reinforces. It's fantastic. So we'll dig into that a little later. What we want to do is explore Judy and her background and her career and her trajectory. That's what people love about this podcast, is really understanding and really hearing the stories of how our executives have the choices they made, the past they've made, so that they can gain insight of how I might be there with it one day, is what they all think. So could you share with us, Judy Fairburn, finished grade 12. What were your next steps? What were some of the points along the career journey to where you are today, and some of the really interesting milestones and accomplishments that you'd like to highlight?
So I went to high school in Calgary, and it wasn't until about grade 12 that I figured out that, okay, I wanted to go into engineering. So I've kind of had 3 chapters in my career. First chapter was engineering, then evolving to be an energy executive, and third chapter here as an entrepreneur and venture fund leader. And in that first chapter as an engineer, liked maths and sciences, and my dad's an engineer too, but that wasn't the key reason I did it. We all, like any kid, you don't necessarily want to follow exactly in the footsteps of your parents. It was some other influences, especially a high school guidance counselor, that really encouraged me to go for it. And had a great career there with different Alberta corporations and global, Syncrude, Shell in particular. And then had the opportunity to work on site a special project with some McKinsey consultants, and realized, okay, maybe they told me, maybe you're just as smart as us, if you know what I mean. and they said, hey, you should do an MBA. So I went and took an executive MBA. And that was really a change catalyst towards my second major act in my career.
Mm-hmm.
And with innovation always at the core, and had a series of roles in the energy sector, with Shell, and then Pan Canadian and Canada, Cenovus, and from roles where I was leading P&L, Weyburn, early days of carbon capture and storage, through to the refining joint ventures, and then EVP of sustainability, and strategy and business innovation roles, and chief digital officer at Cenovus, series of roles there. So I think a background that actually went right from upstream through the downstream, and many different facets of the business, and one little twist in the middle of there that I'll touch on later. And then late 2017, along this journey as well, I was board chair of Alberta Innovates, and was really exposed to what was possible in Alberta, from the point of view of our, energy and where energy transition might be going, ag, health, and then the whole digital transformation overlay of that. And thought, what, it's time for me to actually branch out and be really active in terms of helping shape Alberta, the new economy. So then I took the leap and joined to help mentor its creative destruction lab, and then the 51 was born. So that third act, an entrepreneurial act,
and an ongoing act.
Always learning.
Yeah. And Judy, it's interesting. You've identified 3 distinct acts or chapters in your career, and I credited the MBA as the turning point to move from chapter 1 to chapter 2, and Alberta Innovates role, board chair there for 2 to 3. Like, was there something about those experiences? Was there a commonality that made you recognize it was time to make that pivot, that shift, or was it more, did it just sort of unfold a little more naturally than that, or was there a big aha moment in any of those?
What's always key is I journal and I write, and to see where that's going, see where your writing's going, what's intriguing you, what are you reading? And I think in each of those cases and through experiences, and to listen to those signals, and to know, I think I'm a big proponent of, to know when it's time for you to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think particularly as leaders, it's important to listen to that. We might want to say, oh, gee, I just want to be there a little bit longer. But what's really best for the organization and
Right.
best for yourself
Yeah.
in terms of that right time to move on to the next chapter?
Yeah. What's best for the organization is it's very egoless, right? Like that not many people will look at it and say, this, my departure is the best thing for the organization. It's typically driven around what's the best thing for me. That's a very unique leadership philosophy. Speaking of, what would if you had to identify a couple key principles, what would your leadership philosophy be? I mean, you've led teams all across this country, internationally, of many different sorts and stripes, given your chapters in your career. What's become an overarching leadership philosophy for you?
I think there's a couple aspects that have woven throughout my career. And one has been the value of being really open-minded and seeking out diverse perspectives and people from different realms. I really think that unlocks learning and frankly unlocks innovation. And I'd say, given all the things that have been hitting us in the world, I think it provides you the opportunity to not be blindsided as often, to make sure that your businesses are future relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's one important principle. I think the other thing as well is one of mindset. Taking a perspective, maybe this comes from being an engineer, but I think entrepreneurs are similar as well, to see opportunity and challenges. And
Right.
I think that takes, in tough times, that takes a lot of reminding yourself. But I've got a quote here above my desk that says, most obstacles melt away when we make up our minds to walk boldly through them. And so just taking that kind of mindset, I'd say those are a couple of really important parts of my leadership philosophy. I think the third one is really collaboration makes change possible versus seemingly impossible if we strive alone. And again, to recognize that value of you don't have to solve it by yourself. And to just step back and think about who else holds a similar why as you and is willing to roll up their sleeves to get at some of this change that motivates you. So I think those are a couple things that really always drive me.
Yeah. Judy, were there any mentors or experiences that shaped that leadership philosophy through your career?
I've had lots of mentors throughout my career, and I don't know that there's one in particular, but I think those that stand out are those that encourage me to take the unconventional path.
The road less traveled.
The road less traveled. Yeah, I was going to use that quote, but absolutely.
Sorry, I stole it.
That's perfect. It's perfect. And I think I do remember one person in particular that said, particularly for women leaders, if you imagine a tree and you're likely, and I've done this, going to take a path to success is sort of leaping from branch to another branch. And rather than the conventional path of just climbing straight up the trunk.
Right. Okay.
And that provides a lot of perspective. Sometimes it's not as easy. Again, you got to take a few leaps there. It's not as obvious to others. But I think, again, for me in particular, that path has given me a real breadth of perspective, that ability to look at things differently. And I would say, again, coming back to the earlier point, actually bring foresight to how in businesses to be future relevant and anticipate as much as you can.
Yeah. We often just try and climb straight to the top as fast as we can, don't we? And miss the views, experiences of the different branches. I think that's a really beautiful analogy. Judy, so many people curious about each other's daily practices and routines that help create that winning recipe. Do you have any routines or practices that you do on a regular basis that you think help either ground you or set you up for success each day?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in the importance of some habits. I think particularly through these times we've been living in the last 2 years to give us that sense of grounding and foundation to handle whatever life throws at us. And I'm not the best, but I keep striving to be better. And I think, what's a day in my life? Probably up about 7 o'clock. And I like to walk with my teenagers to their bus, not because they need me. I'll sometimes be behind a bit until the bus shows up. Certainly don't want to embarrass them, but I think it gives me a couple minutes to learn what's going on in their day, and also, frankly, in these virtual times, some fresh air.
Yeah.
To clear one's head first thing in the morning. I try not to do any meetings till about 9 o'clock again, so you can focus on a priority that needs a fresh mind. And then, lots of Zoom meetings with founders, investors, our team, and the 51, the boards I'm on. And then, family is important to me, so I really try to have minimal evening events, so I can focus on that, exercise, all that kind of jazz.
That important balance. You've thrown a lot of things in there: family, outdoors, non-screen time, exercise, mentorship. Yeah, that's a wonderful routine for a day in the life of Judy Fairburn. What's one thing that people might be surprised to know about you?
One of the things I did on this, not just taking leaps from branch to another branch, but I'd say this was a leap from one tree to something far flung, was in 2003. I had the unique opportunity to be a visiting executive at the center of the federal government, this place called the Privy Council Office.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially the group that writes, integrates for the Prime Minister from a public policy, a nonpartisan view. Yep. So and it sits right across from Parliament Hill. And it's a whole story how I ended up being there. I was able to focus on innovation and also immigration, and had the chance to have a firsthand seat in how government works. I was in cabinet meetings, speech from the throne preparation, and something I often reflect on is being on the other side, being lobbied by entities, including from Alberta, things they wanted, right? So again, this sitting in another seat to really understand that world, and then from that experience, I think it really brought me a sense of that the walls aren't as firm as we think we are. Like, we can bridge across and find solutions.
Right. Yeah.
Some days it's tough. Some days it's tough, but it is possible, and those relationships continue to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. You've often told me about that experience, and it just sounded like such a phenomenal opportunity experience to do that. And as you said, that is the top of the sort of federal government system at the PCO. So what a tremendous opportunity. Judy, as you think back on your career and the branches you've been on and whatnot, if someone were to come to you and say, Judy, what advice do you have for me? I want to be like you one day. What would you give them as advice? What would you encourage them to think about or do?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's lots I could say here, but I think for me, it boils down to there's no such word as can't. I think I'd come back to reflecting on, as I was a summer student, this was a few years ago, but in 1983. And that was when Apple computers just started coming out. And worked for a great VP at a mid-sized oil and gas company. And just like, I'd really love to have a way not to have paper production reports from the field anymore, because they're always late, they get lost, all the rest of it. Do you think you could design a system on that newfangled Apple computer over there that could have us actually put them in electronically and send them over and then send them to us electronically over the phone lines?
Yeah.
Because I've asked this of different people and nobody's been able to figure it out. And sometimes when you're young, you don't know what you don't know. So it's like, yeah, sure, I'll figure it out. Taught myself how to code, and built it. And they used it for several years. And I think it just sort of shows again that, and I love this. Like the 51, we meet with founders of all ages, but particularly love meeting the younger founders and individuals that want to get involved with what we're doing every week. And those that stand out, is a bit of tip for anyone that's listening, are not those that have the perfect credentials, or this really, it's awesome technology, lots of patents and all the rest of it, or even a slick pitch, as we're all told, oh yeah, that's got to be perfect. to me, it's really the ones that come where you can just tell that they are really passionate about what they're doing, and they are going to figure out how to get it there. And they also come across as not having all the answers, but they're open-minded, they're keen to listen, they learn, and you just know, again, they're going to make it happen. And they're going to pivot, change course if they need to, but they're going to make it happen. So, just to close off on your question, my advice would be, back to the beginning in my little example, take on challenges. There's no such word as can't, and don't wait for the world to be perfect to get going on it.
That's awesome.
Take the mindset that you're going to learn by doing. And pivoting in our careers is just a normal part of life, especially now.
Yeah. Gone are the days where you work 30 plus years, same place, same job. Yeah, you get the gold watch and head home. Judy, let's dig into the 51 and the amazing organization that you built there. You talked earlier on some of the stats and the why. You talked about the shift of capital in terms of the control of what it is and for women today versus what it'll be over the next few decades. Why the shift? Why did women have less control over capital in previous years, and what's driving this shift? And then why have women founders really found it so difficult to access capital compared to their male counterparts?
I think it comes down to psychology. And we've dug into this at the 51, and people found companies, they invest in what they know and what feels and who looks like us and what feels comfortable. And especially when you're taking risk. And so I think historically, the world of finance, especially venture finance, has been very, very male dominated. And, no different, frankly, than the journey I've come through in engineering as well. And you look at the stats, even a couple of years ago in 2019, at that point, only 12% of those that lead venture funds, general partners, were women. That's gone up a bit, but it's 15% in 2021. And I often go by the 30% rule, that it takes 30% before you have a group in the room and truly having a full voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's just kind of the foundation to it. So I don't think it's necessarily intentional, but when things get built that way, there's going to be an unintended preference to go one way or the other, some structural bias. And I think there's a good Harvard Business Review study that also found, for example, that the traditional pitch model of pitching kind of your businesses doesn't really work well for women. And and there's a couple things to that. There's subtle things like tone of voice, and it's sort of like, I call it the Goldilocks dilemma, being able to be not too harsh, not too soft, and ambition. You want to be serious enough, but not too serious and overbearing, and not enough. And then clothing, finding that right balance there. I don't think that's much of an issue anymore. And they also pointed out the commerciality of it in terms of is often underestimated. So I think there's aspects there that have just unconsciously caused bias. I think we're at a point now, though, where there's so much happening, and we're recognizing that diversity brings opportunity, and especially financially. So I think we are at an inflection point. You see, just over the last couple of weeks, BDC, putting in their diversity and inclusion expectations on reporting for any of the funds that they invest in. There's a lot of things that are changing.
Yeah. Judy, in your role, at CDL Rockies, you see both male and female founders, et cetera. What differences do you see in investing and working with female founded companies? Are there noticeable differences in the ability to work with them, the ability to coach and mentor them, the ability to develop those leaders into viable commercial ventures? Any noticeable differences you point out?
Over the past couple of years, ourselves as founders of the 51, our broader community, we tallied it up the other day, and we've met with over 800 founders from Canada and the US. And the large bulk of those would be women founders or co-founders. And I think what many of them share with us is fairly universally is the difference is that sense of safety, that women founders feel they have a voice. They can speak to a group of women investors, which often we hear are the only group they talk to, and that they can be themselves. And, I think what we found is that you then have this positive energy that starts to be unlocked. And again, coming back to my earlier point, when you're over 30%, it kind of, that stigma steps away, and the potential is unlocked, and you don't think about it twice as being different. And whatever group you are, racially different, gender different, whatever. And I think in that ability to then say, okay, I'm at this table, don't have to worry about that anymore, and I'm in the driver's seat versus the passenger seat. So let's just go shape the world we want to see. That's kind of the way, that's the energy that we sense in the room. And so I think, and the other thing too, to your point of what difference we see in working with female founded companies, I think there is an element where women are risk aware. Some would say it's risk averse. I'd say they're risk aware. That makes, I think, women better investors, and perhaps, if they're building their companies, less speculative. But at times we do have to encourage them to dream a little more and be a little bolder.
And throw a little caution to the wind sometimes. Yeah.
A little bit. Absolutely.
Yeah. Obviously, as a venture fund, you need to generate returns. So that would obviously be a key criteria. You'd use the potential for future returns in your investments. But would you say that there are any different kinds of investment criteria that you look at through the 51 lens in investing in female-led ventures versus just an average venture fund at all? Anything different or unique?
I think in particular, we look at what I'd call the 51 factor. So, in addition, I'll come back to that in a minute, but in addition to looking for founders that just have got that ability to pivot through anything and make it happen, very coachable, and timing a market right where the trends are, showing that they know how to work with people and their customers love working with them, they have early traction, and are making an impact. It is important to us that the companies we invest in have got women equal and gender diverse are equal on the cap table.
Right. Yeah.
So if they're not, we don't go there. It's important that we can bring expertise to them because we're active investors, and early stage investing it's a marriage. You're together for a long time and building these companies, investors and entrepreneurs. It's not just a short thing. So being able to work together, that the founders want to work with us. And we bring in experience in many different areas, how to help companies scale up, whether that's technically or go to market. It's a big effort, especially for science-based founders. How to put in some good basic governance, how to understand your financials and building financial acumen. Many multiple areas that we work with companies on. So we want to be able to bring that factor because that's where we'll bring value add, and we'll tend to work with companies from a very early stage. So to summarize again, we're going to look for where there's a fit, and where we can bring our capital, where together we work together as a community, and we're going to help them scale up and commercialize to success.
Yeah, very supportive ecosystem.
And what founders tell us about what's the different in the way we do it, it's that sense of community that we bring to it. It's not just transactional. Give us your capital and and here, this is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, no, for sure. You guys use the term financial feminism, and I wonder if you could dive into what that means. What do you mean by financial feminism?
It's really coming from the perspective of being equal in all matters financial. And I think supported again by the fact that it is an imperative with what we're seeing in wealth transfer. As I said earlier, women being positioned to be managing 2/3 of the active wealth in our country by the end of the decade. It's an imperative. So
Yeah.
we just work towards having equality in matters financial, and financial acumen and education and learning by doing. It's all part of it.
Yeah. Judy, you mentioned off the top just some of where you're at as of early 2022 here with the 51 in terms of the amount of capital you've got invested, the number of ventures you've funded. What if you could recap those for us, and in terms of the growth and scale and size of the 51, which for listeners, you're only, what is it, 3 years old as an organization?
3 years as an organization, 2 years, about a year and a half as a fund.
Yeah, exactly.
Our first fund. Yeah.
Tremendous results. So maybe could you recap exactly where you guys are at these days?
Yeah, you bet. So we're at a point now that we have 110 investors across Canada. Again, 90% of them are women, and we're really, really appreciative of the male champions that are also investors. I'll touch on that a bit later, but change happens when we work together, and very, very appreciative of the men and others of various genders that are our investors. We've made 30 investments, 14 in the fund, and 16, frankly, that we did before we even formalized the fund by just investing together. $17 million of capital activated. Said earlier, we've talked to 800 plus ventures through various avenues, community of 18,000 global, and we started with 75 only a couple of years ago. And we've done over 40 investor learning sessions. That's a really important part of what we're about. And over 100 mostly digital events these days, including our Friday morning Instagram live TV show.
Yeah.
Every Friday at 10 o'clock Mountain. So, and then I think the key area is we launched in fall of 2020 and closed it in Q1 21. Our first fund. It's sector agnostic, investing in women identifying founders. And we're had such a wait list that we're now doing this successor fund to that, called Fund 2. And the focus there is women's health innovation, integrated business platforms, and because a lot of innovation we see coming out of our women founders, the financial services that are potential there, and really the realm of commerce. And and digital clean tech. And why these areas? It's because, again, in the area of fintech, the wealth transfer in terms of that shift again by 2030, and the women led there. And when you ever see that big a change, it brings opportunity with respect to health. Why? Because typically in the medical world, as we know, a lot of the studies for years didn't necessarily have as much emphasis on clinical studies with women. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. And then with respect to, why have I focus on digital clean tech and things of that nature? Because we know women care about sustainability. And so we're really trying to build upon these areas. And the fourth final area that was the commerce area. And it's because women make 85% of the consumer decisions. So as a result, we're really trying to drive where the trends are and what the facts are saying the opportunity is.
Yeah. Are there others that are on your radar or your horizon, or is that enough to really manage for now in terms of some of the investment areas?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's our base funds. And then now in partnership with Alison Sundstrom, who is a well-known name in the world of ag, and one of the key drivers of creative destruction ag stream, we've launched a food and ag tech fund. And this is a sector-specific fund focused on diverse women and racially diverse underfunded founders in food and ag.
Very cool.
We're busy. Lots of opportunity.
Yeah. There's no shortage of stuff you're working on for sure. And just about to touch on another one, because the 51 isn't just focused on funding more women founders, but also financial inequities that affect women and gender diverse people across Canada through a nonprofit arm, the Movement 51. Can you share a little bit more about that organization, what you're trying to accomplish with that initiative?
Indeed. And I think we really look at this circular economy of any wealth that we're generating. We really view that it's important to recycle that in terms of the education, particularly of the aspiring, those that aren't necessarily accredited investors yet, that could be investors that, in our emerging companies, but want to be in the future, or they want to be founders. And so we've created an affiliate to the 51 called Movement 51 as a non-for-profit. And it's really focused on women identifying and gender diverse people across Canada, and education, financial acumen, entrepreneurship, investing are absolutely core of what we're doing there. And I think one of the key pieces of that has been the Financial Feminist Investing Lab that we created with the University of Calgary Haskayne School of Business, in partnership with the Canadian Women's Foundation. And we're onto our third cohort here shortly. There's still a little bit of space left. It starts in March. Get in touch if anyone's interested. And it really takes a gendered perspective on early stage investing. So it teaches how to look at investing and find the opportunity in doing so by looking at the different genders' experience and the like. And because there's been some limiting factors we talked about earlier that would have precluded people from seeing the opportunity. And so it's an amazing community. I mean, we have it's been generally women, but it's open to anyone who's interested. And from coast to coast, like last cohort, we had a woman from Halifax who stayed up well past midnight her time, because the sense of community, the learning was just so impactful. And what it does is it creates more investors that are then, with a bit of education and community, ready to step up and to be active investors.
So Judy, in terms of the 51, how would you describe in terms of making sure people understand that this is not some sort of passing fad, that this is mainstream, this is legit, this is for real? What, people that might be skeptical, tell us that this thing's got legs, this thing's growing, and this thing's real.
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. And I think I'll take the analogy to what sustainability was, 15 years or so ago. And it was almost more of a fringe, and has now become absolutely mainstream. And it's been a journey into our businesses. And because it really reflects how what does the world look like? And women are 51% of the population. And I think we see the wealth transfer statistics. Women is making 85% of the consumer decisions. So it's just like good business opportunity to actually, it makes business sense to invest in the potential. And I think when I look ahead here, like to 2030, a place where women will have a seat at every table, as leaders, entrepreneurs, and citizens. The voices are there, and it's integrated. I mean, that's the realm of where we're getting to now with environment, for example, in business. It's recognized in Indigenous participation, and it's recognized as critical to be integrated. And I think that's where this is going. And for those of you who are already wonderful champions and have women and diverse voices at your tables, thanks for being an ally. You are driving and creating opportunity.
Yeah, it's important that people don't think this is a fad, a flash in the pan, something of limited consequence, or this might date me, but my mom used to volunteer in the ladies auxiliary or something like, that this is an important part of the investment world going forward, the business world going forward, the capital markets going forward. It's part of the S of ESG. There should be no doubters out there. Kudos to you and Shelley and Alice and everybody involved in the 51 and what you're doing. I can't wait to see more and great, fantastic things happening there. I want to pivot, Judy, to your views on the long-term outlook for Alberta and the future. So in addition to 51 and Creative Destruction Lab, you're director of a number of companies in Alberta and also for us here at BCA. And so given your vantage point across all of those unique seats, how would you describe the future of Alberta at this moment in time?
I'd say there's tremendous opportunity in Alberta because it comes down to our culture, being pioneering and entrepreneurial by nature. And I say that if we keep an open mind. to the possibilities. The importance of looking forward versus in the rearview mirror. And I think one of the things that we've probably been taught is the importance, again, of looking beyond your own paradigms. And I think about, in the realm of how the energy world is transforming, including a lot more focus on what does the market want.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I think there's analogies there, that importance of the public voice, and to really listen to it. And so if you think about the impact now of sustainability in the energy sector, that was kind of a fringe thing, 15 odd years ago, whatever, viewed it such, to now being absolutely central. And I think we're seeing the same thing in the world of tech in terms of ethics and privacy, how that's become so central now to the future of that sector as well. So the listening to the public voice, I think, is very, very critical.
Would you tie that also to on the energy sector side? I mean, your early chapters of your career were in the energy side, seeing massive shift there, convergence of technologies. What do you see for the future of Alberta in the energy side?
We have the opportunity to offer many different energy solutions. And from the foundation, coming from oil and gas, through to, as we're evolving into the world of hydrogen in this province, moving through the whole value chain, and also I think in the world of renewables, and being able to listen to the market and say, yes, we can provide many different choices for you.
We have a number of tools in the toolbox.
Lots of tools in the toolbox, and just being attuned to, and I think, coupling that with tapping into, we're not a big province, so tapping into all the minds, whether they're young, old, whatever races, entrepreneurial, established leaders, and doing that well. And I think BCA is playing a huge role in that regard. That unlocks the talent, because I think one of the biggest things that we're going to continue to compete with, frankly, is talent. Those that can attract, that have the whether that's provinces or places to live, because people can be anywhere right now with the virtual world. So we have to grab people on what's meaningful work for them. We hear this over and over again with the 51. And if your mission is compelling, you will attract wonderful people, and they will make things happen.
Purpose driven. Yeah, absolutely.
Purpose driven. Absolutely.
Judy, you're a pioneer, you're a trailblazer. You're the first female board chair at Alberta Innovates. You've won numerous awards for your work, including the 2020 Influential Women in Business Lifetime Achievement Award. Thinking back on your career, what has been your proudest accomplishment?
There's so much, and I mean, I'd say coming back to March 5th, 2020, seems a lifetime ago, just before we all were totally shifted. Totally shifted with the impact of the pandemic. Was the huge room in Calgary that was celebrating amazing women and male champions who have excelled. And this is the Calgary Influential Women in Business Awards. So winning that Lifetime Achievement Award, the inaugural award, and there's Elizabeth won it last year, and just amazing women. I'm just so honored to have been considered. And I think it was a packed room, and to me that was a turning point in Calgary. And huge, thanks to the whole crew there of Access that founded these awards. And it just shows to the amazing talent that we have, and when you celebrate it, how much is possible. And for me, I think that award just heightened my sense of purpose and the potential of women in our city and beyond. So my Act 3, I guess, as you call it, and so it's driven me that much more in terms of the purpose and mission of the 51. To activate women and through their financial capital, their human capital, to drive positive change. So
proud of you for that accomplishment, and to know you have a Lifetime Achievement Award with so much more lifetime ahead of you is even more awesome.
Yeah, definitely in Act 3 and beyond. So that's my perspective. You always got to keep learning, right? Always.
Totally. And so what is next for you, Judy, and for the 51?
I think there's a lot of things. We all got our 2030 predictions, and looking back, whether it's the path of in terms of energy transition and the like. And again, I come back to a 2030 where, again, women will be controlling 65% of the wealth, and where women and non-binary individuals are financial equals. So, and where we don't regard it as different, actually, it's not fringe to have a women-led company.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It'll just be, yeah, that's norm. Like it'll be well more than 30% of them, right? So it'll just be the norm.
Yeah, totally.
That's what I look for. And I think what comes with that is amazing, economic growth in this province in Canada, and it being the place that as a result just attracts best in terms of talent. That my teenagers are saying, yeah, this is the place to be. They don't want to live anywhere else.
I think that's as a parent of kids similar ages, I think that's the ultimate litmus test of have we done a good job, is to have a place that our kids want to live and set roots down instead of forget this, I'm out of here. So yeah. Judy, as we close, what's an idea or an insight that you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
I mean, things are getting a little better in Alberta these days. I think what's so key, though, is always to fearlessly look forward and open up our minds to what's possible, and really make sure that we are open-minded, and that we look at who that we listen to, and are really interested and curious about the perspectives of those that are different from ourselves. Again, whether it's in age, whether it's in gender, whether it's in racial background, where people have lived in the world. Because I think when we do that, we gain perspective, we will build, innovative new opportunities. That's been a secret, I think, to many of the ventures I co-founded. It's been people from different worlds that you come together. And I think our future depends on that. So, I think I really ask those that might be listening today to just make a conscious decision and to reach out to someone who's in a very different world than yourselves and listen to what they have to say and be really open to learning from them. Because when we do that, when we value the perspective of others, again, innovative solutions result. And, Alberta, we need more of that.
Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of C-Suite Unplugged, an Alberta Better podcast series. This podcast is a production of the Business Council of Alberta, and you can learn more about us at businesscouncilab.com. And we'd love to connect with you on social media, so give us a follow at BizCouncilAB on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And if you liked this episode and want to support our message of shared prosperity for all, please be sure to head over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts to subscribe, rate the show, and give us a quick review. New episodes drop every other Tuesday. Thanks for listening. See you next time.